Hello, Jim. Welcome to Foreignconnect podcast today.
Good morning.
Good morning. So today I had a few questions for you around digital transformation, since I know that you're an expert in this area. But to give listeners some context of who you are, can you first tell me where you work right now, what you do, what have you done?
Sure. I work for a company. Well, I've started a company called Maker Turtle. It's a digital consultancy that is really focused around, keeping things simple, taking out the complexity. This idea of digital transformation. When I talk to my customers, when I talk to people understand that it's important to make part of their business, but they don't quite understand what it all means. It becomes very scary and technical, and it sounds like something that's a lot of work. And so what I'm trying to do with Maker Turtle is help people take the complexity out of the conversation, provide a framework for how to sort of approach this idea of transformation, and then really focus on the business value. Understand why we want to do this. It's not about the technology. It's truly about what value means for your company, and then how do we translate that definition into digital.
I see. That's very interesting. So do you customize your service to each different clients, or do you kind of have a framework that you use for?
Of course, it's a little bit of both. I mean, you can't. I don't think you can go in with a blank sheet of paper. I have a framework for both defining value, defining digital, and then understanding what the intersection is. But it's really important to get in and listen to you, listen to the customer, listen to what business means to them, what value means. It will always end up being custom, but it's always based on a framework that just accelerates it and takes advantage of best practices.
Is there some specific points you always check with customers when you ask questions?
A lot.
A lot?
Yeah. So yeah, the framework really helps. When we talk about business value, for example, we talk about what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to build value for the shareholder or the owner, or are you trying to build value for the customer? Are you trying to build value for the employee? All three are important. And you have to make a decision sometimes. It's always going to be a balance between building a great company and building a great stock. But drilling into that high level, there are details we can get to be a lot more specific than the high level stuff. To me, all this stuff it's like trying to get in shape. It's really easy to get in shape. There's only two things you have to worry about: diet and exercise. That's it. Now, yeah, when you drill into the details, there's a lot of specific things we need to talk about, but at a high level, it's just diet and exercise. And it's the same thing with digital and digital transformation.
Interesting. So my second question is, how should businesses see digital transformation?
Yeah, that's actually the second part of my framework approach, is to talk about the 5 components of digital transformation. I wrote about this actually in a book. It's called Don't Think So Much. And it's a simpler way to understand digital and digital transformation. And so I always talk about 5 components. There's 5 chunks of digital that you need to understand. The first 3 are things that you would expect: systems and processes designed to automate internal operations, to bring you closer to your customers, and even information becoming part of the products and services that you sell. The 4th component would be data. And I'm not talking about how do I get the data to flow in between those first 3. It's really how your organization, do they have the skills to get information out of that data and then use that information to make good business decisions. And then the 5th component, the final component of a great digital business, is actually the one that most people don't expect. The 5th component of your great digital business is the people. your employees, the people that perform those processes every single day, that connect directly with your customers and that service the products that you make and sell. If they're not part of the digital transformation, if you don't rely on them to help capture their knowledge, to understand the design of what you're doing, and I'm not talking visual, I'm also talking process design, to make them, human accessible. If you leave out the human element, then you'll lose out on your overall transformation.
I see. So I have personally experienced some gaps between like operator versus like what the leadership is thinking about.
Yeah.
As an operation, right? Like, is there any tip around how to navigate that gap when you're building that transformation?
Oh, absolutely. The idea of really understanding how to connect, build a culture within your company and truly connect with your employees to help them understand what's going on and be a part of the change. That's one of the key requirements that a digital leader has to have. Technology experience is important, that's great, but really it's how do you communicate empathetically, how do you pay attention to what people are saying back to you so they can be part of it. If you don't have that culture, if you don't have that level of communication, this will all fail.
I have another question actually. Like,
sure.
How can you tell if something is able to, like, how can you tell if a data you want to interpret is something that you can track from the existing data? Like, for example, if you have an output that you want to understand from your existing data, but then, like, how can you make sure that whatever the output you want to get out of it is possible to get out from the data?
Well, you have to experiment, you have to play. And I think that a lot of detail about how to experiment with data. I think the most important thing, especially for leadership, is you have to enable your teams to find out, okay, you have a theory, you have an idea, take the data you have, understand the tools, and then see if you can answer the question. If you don't have the data, if you don't have some aspects of the data or maybe the right volume, go get some more. But the key thing is, let's put a time box on this. Let's say, let's go 30 days and understand what we can and can't do and make a decision at that endpoint. Do we invest more or do we redirect? I think the biggest mistake that the great thing that most organizations do is go experiment and play. And try to find what does work and what doesn't. You have to have hands-on. But the biggest mistake that organizations make is they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to say, hey, we've done 20% of the work, we've got 80% of the answer. That's good enough for now. Let's either invest in getting better information or just stop and move to another opportunity. I think that's the most important piece of it. Allow people to experiment and play with real data, but then set time limits.
I have one more following question actually for that.
Absolutely.
So what is, like, what kind of approach or attitude do you think is optimal for managers and also employee, for them to be able to experiment with a lot of data, for them to be collaborative together and for them to come up with something together?
I think there's got to be an element of both curiosity and trust. So curiosity, it's you have to go in with an open mind and think, I may not know the answer, but there's something in here. Maybe it's also optimism, but you learn what you don't understand and learn about. If there's a new tool to use, if there's a term in the data you don't understand, it's okay not to know off the top of your head, but go in and ask questions and be inquisitive and think outside of the box. I know that's kind of a trite statement, but really do it. And the other thing too is to have a level of trust that there's going to be any number of sort of alleys that you'll go down that don't lead anywhere. That's okay. The value is in the experimentation and the journey. And it's just going to make getting to the end point better, but you have to allow yourself. Now there, and here's an interesting thing. In the West, I've heard this a lot. The Western culture in corporations does not like the concept of failing. You know, we don't want to invest in things that fail. It's very important that it's all about winning, and it's all about, you know, checking the box that you got something done. So this idea that comes out of startups about failing fast, it never seems to work inside of corporations because there's this cultural thing about not wanting to fail. And so to get beyond that, I always like to change the language. You're not failing, you're testing a new hypothesis, and your test succeeded, and you proved the hypothesis wrong. And so now it's time to do another successful test and test another hypothesis. It sounds silly and small, but in big groups or really conservative groups, it helps to get people to understand, hey, this is all about experimentation, and trust that it's okay to prove, to report that things aren't what they seem.
I only brought this up because changes are scary for any organization.
Oh, sure.
At any size. And then when changes happen, like usually, well, first reaction, when they don't know how to work together, like management would blame on the worker, and the worker would blame on management, and then things get stuck. So I kind of wanted to find out what your opinion on this in terms of like what kind of collaborative attitude they should have working toward the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. That gets back to the concept of trust. You have to, you know, this idea of being able to have open and honest communication between teams, between manager and worker, that's extremely important. If you can't trust the fact that we can talk openly, you'll never be able to talk to them about, I'm afraid of this, I'm intimidated by this change, I don't know what you're talking about, I need to be humble. If you don't have that trust established, then you'll never get there.
Interesting. Is this something that you facilitate also for your clients?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why I put, you know, team and your employees is the fifth most important, the fifth important piece, just as important as the rest of your digital transformation. It's a really important component because people are that's where all the knowledge is right now. And change is a huge aspect of this. It can be great for everybody, but that's got to be something that you work on just as much as you work on trying to learn what artificial intelligence is.
I see. Very interesting. So my third question is, what do you think would happen to businesses who don't make the transformation right now?
Well, to be frank, you know, sometimes the answer would be nothing. Nothing's going to happen. There are certain businesses that either have really strong defensible products, moats around their business, market positions that protects them. To really understand, though, if digital is important, you know, we need to look at your customers. Listen to your customers. What are they asking for, and what do you do that they're not asking for that they could actually be asking for? And competitors, what are your competitors doing? What, you know, how does share change in your industry, and what are your competitors doing to do innovation? And especially for B2B. So a lot of my work is in manufacturing and industrial or business to business companies, and you have to understand your distribution channels out to the customer and your supply chains to your raw materials. Changes in the value chain are going to suggest that you become a digital business as well. And certainly the products themselves, you know, does technology, the core technology of what you build, say laser beams or metal pipes or whatever, as well as the information technology, the technology is changing. Can you bring that into your products?
Mm.
And then finally, your employees. You need to understand your employees. Are they aging? Are they changing over in their understanding or demands on what they want? You're going to need your employees going forward. If you understand those pieces of your environment, then you'll know whether or not you have to run to digital or just walk. I actually think digital transformation, digital thinking can be a real step change for any business. A huge change in your business results, but you have to understand it. You can't outsource it. Well, you can't outsource it completely. You can start with external folks, but in the end, you have to understand it inside your four walls.
I see. So I guess to take the opposite side of my question,
Sure.
Can you explain what do you think would happen to businesses who would make the transformation? Like, is there any like a big benefits of looking into this?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the benefits are going to actually going to respond to those things I talked about. So you're going to see top line. You're going to see a sales increase on the top line because you're not only you're building new products, you're taking share away from your competition, and you're growing into new markets that you or new revenue streams that you never could do before. You'll be able to you'll see it in terms of tighter connections with your customers and your channels. Basically, if you can do electronic transactions, it's just so much easier to do that. Customer switching is going to be happen a lot less, and you will see the improvement in your employees. I mean, the employee population is expecting a different level of communication from companies, and when you deliver on that, you're going to see it in higher productivity and in retention.
Do you say that it's going to be long-term change, or do you think it's going to be short-term benefit?
Oh no, it'll be a long-term change. It'll be foundational. I would actually, I guess I would call it more at one level, it'll be a step change up, because all of a sudden you'll be like, let's just talk about products. If you digitize your products, the opportunity there is to do a step change in changing market share. But then, it's always a game. Next year, the competition is going to come back with their next new feature, and you're going to go back and forth and back and forth. Digital could lock you into different types of cash flows. It'll lock in business. It will make your business less cyclical. But there's always next year, and there's always the next thing you have to do.
Interesting.
It certainly will help sort of bulwark against a slide. If I actually truly, I don't want to be alarmist, but I think if people don't understand the impact of digital, it's just a matter of time. Over time, their business will erode, and they'll wonder what happened.
I see. So I'm going to move on to the very last question, actually. So for corporations who want to look into create this digital transformation, who wants to hire a consultant like you, what kind of quality do you think they should look for in consultant?
Well, the first thing about bringing in consultants is, you could bring in folks like me, a niche, a very sort of agile type of approach, or you can bring in a big, expensive firm with a really nice name that everyone hires those guys. It really doesn't matter if you listen to them, but you really have to understand what this digital stuff is. You can't outsource responsibility for it. You can't hire me and say, Jim will do my digital. No. I'm going to help you understand it. I'm going to accelerate your digital transformation, but in the end, you have to own it.
Right.
And then the type of qualities you need in an external consultant, first would be emotional intelligence, I would call it. You have to be an effective communicator, because the biggest thing we're talking about here is changing the nature of information and truly power inside of a company, comfort level. And so somebody that has the ability to help people understand not only what's happening, but what's in it for them and why this is good. Absolutely, there has to be a good solid business acumen. You know, at the end of the day, there has to be a reason why we're doing this. It's not because it's cool. It's not because everyone else is doing it, but because of what our business is, what we do for our customers, and how we define value. There has to be a solid why. And so you have to have someone who can talk to that business side of things. And finally, this is important and it is required, but it is not the number one thing. And someone who actually understands technology in a hands-on way, who's built things. You can't lead with technology. You can't come in and say, I want to talk to you about this cloud solution, or I want to talk to you about Bitcoin, or I want to talk to you about robotics. That's leading with technology, and that's the wrong thing to do. On the other, you have to lead with the business value. However, if you're talking with someone who has never done anything technical, who doesn't understand how the bits and bytes go together, that's to me the first sign you've got the wrong consultant, because you'll talk about theory, but you'll never get into practice.
I see. Well, Jim, thank you very much for coming to my show today. We learned a lot from you. So lastly, can you tell us where people can find you?
Oh, absolutely. So the easiest one to remember is the name of my book, Don't Think So Much. So www.don'tthinksomuch.com is the book site, and the company is Maker Turtle, easy to remember as well. So it's www.makerturtle.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.